The lights from the restaurant shimmered across the street as Nola sat in her car, clutching a small gift box. She could hear the laughter from inside. Her mother's birthday celebration. A place she was explicitly told not to come. Her brother's words echoed in her head. Mom doesn't want you there. You'll just ruin everything, like always. So she stayed parked alone, watching them toast through the glass. What they didn't know was that Nola wasn't the same failure they'd thrown aside. And before the night ended, her silence would speak louder than every word they ever used to break her. Nola grew up feeling invisible in her own home. Her family acted like she was just a shadow that followed them around. Her brother, Moro Jr., was everything their parents wanted, loud, confident, and always praised. He was the kind of child they showed off to friends and relatives. But Nola was different. She didn't talk much. She preferred to sit quietly with her computer, learning how to code, building small projects, and dreaming of one day creating something great. Her parents didn't understand her world. To them, it looked like she was wasting time. When she tried to explain what she was doing, her father laughed and said, "You can't make a living sitting behind a screen, Nola. Learn something useful." His words cut deep, but Nola didn't argue. She simply smiled, even when it hurt. She had learned that no matter what she did, she would never be enough for them. Every family gathering was the same. Her parents proudly told stories about Moro Jr.'s achievements, his promotions, his business plans, his charm. When it came to Nola, they said little or nothing. Sometimes they joked about how she was always hiding behind her laptop. It embarrassed her, but she stayed quiet. What they didn't see was the fire inside her. A quiet determination to prove that her dreams were not foolish. At night, when the house was silent, Nola worked. She watched tutorials, wrote lines of code, and created designs on her old computer. The screen became her escape, her best friend. She believed that one day, her patience would mean something. But each day in that house reminded her she didn't belong. That no matter how hard she tried, her family would never see her worth. Sometimes, she wished they'd just ask how she was doing or show a little pride in her efforts. But they never did. They only compared her to her brother, reminding her that he was the real success. So Nola stopped trying to please them. She started to focus on herself, learning quietly, growing slowly, and building her strength in silence. They called her lazy. They called her a failure. But Nola knew something they didn't. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It's the space where great things are born. And while they mocked her for doing nothing, she was quietly preparing to become everything they never believed she could be. When their mother's 60th birthday was coming up, Nola wanted to do something special. Despite all the hurt she had felt over the years, she still loved her mother deeply. She saved money for weeks and bought a beautiful gold locket, engraved with the words, "For the woman who taught me strength." It was simple but meaningful, something that came straight from her heart. She imagined her mother smiling, maybe even hugging her for once. Before the big day, Nola sent a message to her brother, Moro Jr., asking about the time and place for the dinner. She waited, excited to finally be part of something. But when his reply came, her heart sank. He wrote, "Mom doesn't want you there. You'd ruin her mood. Just send your gift." Nola stared at the message for a long time, reading it again and again. Her hands trembled, and her chest felt heavy. It wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. It was like they were telling her she didn't exist in the family anymore. For years she had been quiet, forgiving, and patient. She thought maybe one day they would see her differently. But that text showed her the truth. They never would. She sat in silence for a long time, holding the locket she had bought with love. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she took a deep breath, wiped her face, and began to wrap the gift carefully. She tied it with a golden ribbon, wrote no name on the card, and sent it through the mail anonymously. Her mother would still get her gift, she just wouldn't know it came from the daughter she had forgotten. That night, Nola lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every memory played in her mind. The times they laughed without her, the times they mocked her, and the countless moments she had been left out. Something inside her shifted. The girl who kept waiting for their love was gone. The silence that used to hurt her now became her strength. She whispered to herself, "They want silence? I'll give them silence." But this time, it wasn't the kind of silence that came from pain. It was the kind that grows before something powerful begins. Nola decided she would disappear from their world, not in defeat, but in preparation. One day, her silence would speak louder than every cruel word they had ever said. And when that day came, they would remember the daughter they erased. After the painful message from her brother, Nola packed her bags and left home quietly. She moved to another part of the city, far from the people who made her feel invisible. She rented a small apartment, just big enough for her and her laptop. There, she decided to start over. No more trying to please anyone, no more waiting for love that never came. She named her new project Novamind, a small tech startup she built from nothing but faith, skill, and sleepless nights. The beginning was hard. Investors didn't take her seriously. Most of them wanted big names and flashy backgrounds, not a quiet girl who came from nowhere. She sent dozens of proposals and got rejected every time. Some clients showed interest at first, then backed out when they saw she was working alone. Her savings started to run low, but she refused to give up. Every night, she sat in front of her old computer, eyes tired but heart determined, building her dream line by line in code. One evening, after weeks of working without rest, Nola finally finished her first real prototype, an AI program designed to help small businesses automate customer support. She uploaded a demo online, hoping maybe someone would notice. She didn't expect much. But the next morning, her inbox was full of messages. A global tech company had found her project and wanted to talk. They said her idea was unique, powerful, and full of potential. They invited her to Dubai to discuss a partnership deal. Nola could hardly believe it. The same girl who had been told she was wasting her time behind a screen was now being recognized by one of the biggest firms in the world. When she arrived in Dubai, she walked into the meeting room with quiet confidence. She didn't need anyone's approval anymore. She had earned her own. The deal went through, and within months, Novamind grew faster than she ever imagined. She hired a small team, opened an office, and started getting media attention. A year later, her company was valued in millions. Reporters wanted to tell her story. Magazines called her the tech queen of Africa. Yet, through all the noise and success, one thing never changed. Her phone never rang with a call from home. Not one message saying, "We're proud of you." But Nola didn't wait for it anymore. She had found something stronger than their approval, her purpose. And this time, she wasn't building for them. She was building for herself. One afternoon, as Nola was finishing a meeting with her new investors, her phone buzzed with a name she hadn't seen in months. Morrow Jr. For a moment, she just stared at the screen. Part of her wanted to ignore it, but something inside her whispered to pick up. She answered softly, unsure of what to expect. "Hey sis, long time." Morrow's cheerful voice came through as if nothing had ever happened. "So, Mom's birthday is coming up again. We're planning something big this year." Nola's heart skipped. The last birthday was still fresh in her memory. The text that said she wasn't wanted. The night she sat in her car outside the restaurant, holding her gift, watching them laugh without her. That pain had pushed her to rebuild her entire life. Now the same brother who told her to stay away was suddenly calling her sis again. She stayed quiet, listening as he kept talking. "It's going to be a grand event this time. Maybe you can help, contribute a bit, cover the venue or something. You're doing well now, right?" There it was. The same tone, the same manipulation. They didn't want her there out of love. They wanted her money, her success. Not once did he ask how she was doing or what she'd been through. He only cared about what she could give. Nola felt a small smile spread across her face, not out of happiness, but understanding. They hadn't changed at all. She spoke calmly. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady. "Send me the details." When she ended the call, Nola sat quietly for a few minutes. Old pain tried to return, but this time, it didn't break her. Instead, it fueled her. She wasn't the forgotten girl anymore. The woman who once mailed a gift anonymously now owned one of the fastest-growing companies in the country. She had power, presence, and peace, things her family never gave her. That night, Nola looked at her reflection in the mirror and smiled. The same people who told her she didn't belong now wanted her at their table, but she would come on her own terms. She wouldn't show up as the failure they pitted. She would show up as proof that silence can rebuild an empire. In her heart, she whispered, "This time, I won't just attend the party. I'll own it." They thought they were inviting the same Nola. But this year, she would return not as the outcast they rejected, but as the storm they never saw coming. The night of the grand birthday banquet finally arrived. The Moro family spared no expense, renting one of the most luxurious hotels in Lagos. The ballroom sparkled with golden lights, crystal chandeliers, and elegant flower arrangements. Guests in designer clothes filled the room. Politicians, business partners, and family friends all gathered to celebrate Nola's mother's 61st birthday. The event looked perfect, but behind all the glamour was a truth no one in that room knew yet. As guests mingled, laughter echoed through the hall. Moro Jr. moved from table to table, greeting people proudly. When someone asked him, "Where's your sister? Didn't she come this time either?" he chuckled and replied, "She's probably still chasing her little laptop dreams somewhere." A few people laughed politely, unaware of the irony behind his words. Nola's name was not on the guest list. Her family hadn't mentioned her to anyone. To them, she was still the quiet, forgotten girl who didn't belong in their world of wealth and attention. They had no idea that every single detail of the celebration, the music, the decorations, the food, even the hall they stood in, had been paid for by the very person they had erased. Weeks earlier, when Nola's brother called to invite her and hinted that she should contribute, she decided to go beyond his expectations. Instead of simply helping, she secretly took over the full sponsorship. Her company, Novamind, had partnered with the hotel's tech systems, so she arranged everything quietly under her brand name. The family never checked who funded the event. They just assumed it came from one of their wealthy friends. Now, as the party continued, Nola waited behind the scenes, calm and composed. She wasn't there for revenge. She was there to remind them who she had become. Her success wasn't loud or boastful. It was graceful and undeniable. She wanted the truth to reveal itself naturally, in front of everyone who once laughed at her. The MC took the stage to thank the sponsors of the night. "Before we continue," he said with excitement, "we'd like to share a short message from a very special guest, the woman behind tonight's success." The lights began to dim, and a hush fell over the room. Faces turned toward the giant screen at the front. In a few seconds, the truth that would change everything was about to appear. The same Nola they once ignored was about to walk into their world again, not as the failure they left behind, but as the force that made their celebration possible. As the music softened and the lights dimmed, the MC took the stage, holding the microphone with a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "before we continue this wonderful celebration, we have a special message from someone who made tonight possible." The crowd quieted, curious. The big screen at the front flickered to life. A few guests leaned forward, wondering who this mystery person could be. Then a logo appeared, Novamind Technologies. The audience murmured in recognition. The company had become famous for its groundbreaking work in artificial intelligence. Moments later, a video began to play, showing clips of modern offices, young engineers working, and the words, "Empowering Africa through innovation." And then, Nola's face appeared. For a second, the room fell completely silent. Her parents' eyes widened. Her brother froze mid-laugh. Everyone recognized her instantly. The daughter they rarely spoke about, the sister who was too quiet and too odd. Nola looked confident and calm on screen, dressed in a sleek suit, her voice steady and warm. "I couldn't attend last year," she said, looking straight into the camera. "I was told I'd ruin the celebration. So this year I decided to make it unforgettable, in my own way." The audience gasped, then broke into applause. People turned toward Nola's family, smiling, thinking it was all a beautiful family surprise. They had no idea what was really happening, that the entire event, from the lights to the music to the luxurious decor, had been paid for by the very woman they had rejected. The video continued, showing the achievements of Novamind, awards, global partnerships, and its founder's story of resilience and innovation. Her voiceover spoke about building from pain, turning rejection into purpose, and believing in silence that grows stronger with time. Every word carried emotion, truth, and quiet power. By the time the video ended, the applause was thunderous. People cheered, some stood clapping, others whispered about how inspiring her story was. But while the crowd celebrated, Nola's family sat frozen in disbelief. Her father's hand trembled slightly. Her mother stared at the screen, her lips parted, eyes glistening. Moro Jr. couldn't find a word to say. The truth hit them like a wave. The daughter they once told not to come had built the empire that made this night possible. As the lights came back on, the MC said proudly, "Please give a round of applause to the founder of Nova Mind, Miss Nola Moro." The entire room erupted again. Cameras flashed. Guests turned toward the entrance, waiting for her to appear. And in that moment, her family realized the girl they erased had returned, not in anger, but in power. As the applause echoed through the grand hall, the doors slowly opened. All eyes turned toward the entrance. Nola stepped in, wearing a simple yet elegant white gown that shimmered under the lights. She looked calm, confident, and untouchable. Beside her walked two well-known tech investors and a few business leaders who had flown in for the celebration. The guests whispered in admiration, realizing the woman they had just seen on the screen was now right there. The mind behind Nova Mind. Her brother, Moro Jr., froze where he stood. His confident smile vanished, replaced by pure disbelief. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth as if trying to hold back tears. Her father's face turned pale, his eyes wide with shock. They had spent the whole evening bragging about their success, unaware that the real star of the night was their own daughter, the one they had once told not to come. Nola walked slowly through the crowd, greeting guests politely as she made her way toward her family's table. People clapped as she passed, thinking this was a touching family surprise. To them, it looked like a perfect reunion, a daughter returning to honor her mother. But beneath that polite applause, the tension was sharp enough to cut the air. When she reached the table, her father finally found his voice. You did all this?" he asked, his tone trembling between pride and guilt. Nola smiled softly, looking him straight in the eye. "You told me I'd ruin the party, remember?" she said. "Looks like I upgraded it instead." The crowd laughed and clapped, thinking it was a heartfelt joke. Cameras flashed, and reporters leaned in to capture the family moment. But Nola's calm eyes told a different story. This wasn't a reunion born of love. It was the quiet triumph of someone who had learned to rise without applause. Her brother tried to regain his composure. "You really surprised us, sis," he said awkwardly, forcing a smile. "You've come a long way." "Yes," Nola replied gently. "I had to, since I wasn't invited to follow your path." Her words were smooth, polite, but sharp enough to sting. Her mother reached out to touch her hand, eyes filled with mixed emotions. Pride, guilt, and disbelief. "Nola, we didn't know." Nola nodded softly, stopping her. "I know, Mom. You never did." The audience clapped again, still thinking it was a beautiful exchange of love. But as Nola stood there, surrounded by applause, her heart was steady. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here to remind them that silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the sound of strength, rebuilding itself. After the event ended, the guests were still buzzing about the shocking revelation when Nola's family asked her to step aside for a private talk. They found a quiet corner in the hotel's lounge, away from the cameras and curious eyes. Her mother was the first to speak, her voice trembling as she tried to hold back tears. "We were just trying to protect you from disappointment, Nola," she said, reaching out to touch her daughter's hand. Nola didn't pull away, but her face stayed calm and unreadable. She took a deep breath before replying, her words slow and clear. "No, Mom. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting your image. You didn't want people to see me fail, because you never believed I could succeed." Her father sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You have to understand, we only wanted the best for you," he said quietly. Nola shook her head. "The best for me? Or the best for you? You told me to stop dreaming, to stop embarrassing the family. You shut me out when I needed you the most. You thought my silence meant weakness, but it just meant I was busy building something you couldn't imagine." Her mother's eyes filled with guilt, but her brother, still uncomfortable, tried to lighten the mood. "Come on, sis," he said with a forced laugh. "Don't be so dramatic. You're successful now. Why bring up old stuff?" Nola turned to him slowly, her expression sharp enough to cut through his fake smile. "Old stuff? You laughed at me when I had nothing. You told people I was a failure. You made jokes about me behind my back. You erased me from this family long before I walked away." Her brother's grin faded. The room went quiet. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Nola stood up, adjusting her blazer. Her tone was calm but final. "You all taught me something important. that love without respect is just control. I spent years trying to earn your approval. Now I don't need it. Her mother whispered, Nola, please, but she didn't finish. Nola had already turned toward the door. She paused for a brief second, looked back and said, You erased me once. But don't worry. I've learned to live just fine without being seen. And with that, she walked out, leaving her family frozen in silence. They finally realized that the girl they once ignored was gone, replaced by a woman who no longer needed their validation. Weeks later, the story of Nola Moro took over the internet. Magazines, blogs, and news channels all had the same headline. The girl who funded the party that banned her. People couldn't stop talking about it. Social media was flooded with clips of her speech, her calm smile, and the shocked faces of her family at the event. Everyone was inspired by how she handled her pain. Not with revenge or anger, but with quiet power. Her story became a symbol for anyone who had ever been rejected or overlooked by their own family. People shared posts saying, Be like Nola, let your success speak louder than their silence. The world finally saw what her family never did, her strength, her intelligence, her grace. Meanwhile, things began to fall apart for the Moros. Their family business, once known for luxury and wealth, started losing clients. Investors pulled out after seeing the headlines and the criticism online. Customers didn't want to be associated with a family that had treated their own daughter so poorly. It wasn't Nola's doing. It was karma unfolding quietly, just as life often does. But Nola never celebrated their downfall. She didn't post anything, didn't respond to the reporters asking for interviews, and didn't say a single bad word about her family. Instead, she focused on her work. Her company, Novamind, was expanding rapidly across Africa, attracting global investors who admired her leadership and calm resilience. One morning, news broke that Nola had made a massive donation, but not to a tech project or her company's partners. She donated to several women's shelters and educational programs across Nigeria, all in her mother's name. The gesture shocked everyone, including her family. Her mother saw the announcement on TV and broke down in tears. She couldn't understand how the daughter they had once ignored could still show such kindness. That single act spoke louder than any speech ever could. Nola didn't do it for forgiveness or fame. She did it because she had learned that true power isn't in shouting your pain. It's in turning it into purpose. Her silence was not weakness. It was strength dressed in peace. Over time, people began calling her the voice of the voiceless. Her interviews and quotes were shared everywhere, especially her words. You don't have to fight to be seen. Just grow so much that they can't look away. Her family never publicly responded, but they knew the truth. Nola's silence had spoken. Her success had roared. And the girl they once pushed aside had become a woman the world now celebrated. Not because she shouted back, but because she rose higher without ever looking down. Months later, Nola stood on the biggest stage of her life, the Women in Tech Summit in Lagos. The hall was filled with hundreds of women, investors, students, and leaders who had followed her journey from rejection to success. The giant screen behind her showed her name in bold letters, Nola Moro, founder of Novamind. As the applause faded, she took a deep breath, smiled gently, and began to speak. She looked around the room, her voice calm but full of emotion. Sometimes, family tells you not to show up, not because you don't belong, but because your light exposes their shadows. The crowd went silent. Every word felt personal, like she was speaking directly to the hearts of those who had been told they weren't good enough. Don't argue. Don't fight to be understood. Just build quietly, she continued. Let your success walk in the room before you. Do. Her words hit deep. Many women in the audience had tears in their eyes. Some stood up, clapping, moved by how someone who had been silenced for so long could now speak with so much grace and strength. The cameras flashed, recording every moment. Within hours, her speech spread across social media, played on news channels and filled timelines. Nola didn't stay for long after the event. She walked out quietly, away from the lights and noise, into the cool evening air. The city lights shimmered across the skyline. The same city that once felt too big, too cold, too cruel. But tonight, it felt like home. She thought about everything. The rejection, the humiliation. The nights she cried alone while building her dream. Every memory now felt distant, like a story she had already overcome. She whispered softly to herself, smiling at how far she had come. They told me not to show up. But now, the world can't start without me. Those words weren't about pride. They were about freedom. She had learned that she didn't need validation, approval, or applause. She just needed to keep showing up for herself. As she walked away from the building, people called her name, reporters tried to follow, but Nola didn't look back. Her silence had already said everything. The girl who was once told to stay away had become the woman the world was waiting to hear from. And her light now reached far beyond the shadows that once tried to hide her.